Welcome to a Confused Wizard's how-to. So, you want to write a D&D campaign? Well, I'm assuming you do because you clicked on the video. Okay, I hear you asking, who does this guy think he is? Well, I'll have you know, I'm a pretty big deal. I've made $5s of dollars on my RPGs. If you haven't already clicked off the video, let's take a frightening plunge into campaign planning. Back to the lecture at hand, perfection is perfected and all that. But really, I've found success in my campaigns when I've created a preparatory framework. If I'm going to be a proper D&D YouTuber, we need something snappy and memorable. Okay, presenting the patented Confused Wizards CAPS framework. Patent pending.
Patent pending, patent pending, patent pending.
The CAPS framework, cause, approach, pitch, cause, approach, pitch, and start. This will be explained later, but the hope for this framework is that it will break a campaign into smaller chunks that you can reference later when you're doing the actual planning. Before we get to the actual framework, we need some details. The first thing you always want to do is ask for your players' preferences. Well, the real first step is to find some players. Ask in a general sense what they would like to do in a campaign and what they don't want to do. Ideally, this is before you've written or planned anything about your future campaign, so you can use these preferences in your framework. The last thing you want to do is waste your time preparing for something people don't want or care about. But you also want to reflect on what you want out of a campaign. In my experience, some DMs seem to forget that they're also a player, and their investment is as important as their players. Being invested in your campaign ideas will vastly improve your DMing, and can increase the investment of your players. You'll likely have to make some compromises with all these preferences, but remember, the two greatest skills a DM can have is adaptability and communication. If two or more preferences are conflicting, have an open conversation with your players and find what the essence of that preference is. Hopefully, you create this essence in another aspect of your campaign. Next, you want to decide a time frame for this campaign. This is also something you should seek player input on. Look, I get it. Everyone wants to be Robert Jordan with their campaigns, but there's something to be said about being Ernest Hemingway. Poorly constructed analogies aside, a concise campaign can be as fun as an expansive one, and they're less liable to fall apart before finishing. Personally, I prefer to run 20 to 30 session-long campaigns, so roughly 5 to 7 months IRL, if you're playing once a week, that is. Is that rare? I don't know. I heavily recommend new DMs run shorter campaigns for their first try. As we'll discuss later, this won't hinder any aspiring Tolkiens in crafting their epic 1 to 20 campaigns. And so, without further gilding the lily and no more ados, remember our handy acronym that I definitely didn't have to force and totally feels natural. CAPS. Your core is the heart of your campaign, the thing or things you most want to focus on. This will become your campaign's identity. Some examples of this could be, I want to focus on emotional character moments, or I want to focus on detailed multi-stage encounters, or I want to focus on challenging combats. Ideally, you should choose one, but we all know one is never enough for some of you. Getting serious, you could choose more than one, but there comes a point when you hit diminishing returns, where your core just becomes, I want to do everything and do as best as I can. For your core, less is more. When writing your cores, you generally want an adjective that will describe how you want a game mechanic or dynamic to feel. In other words, an adjective with something that happens often in a campaign. Your approach is broadly the style of campaign you'll be running. Styles of campaigns are a broad topic and kind of complicated on its own, so I'm gonna do my best to summarize it here. I want to stress the oversimplification of my next statement. For those unfamiliar with various styles of running a campaign, think of it as a scale of how goals and complications are presented to players. On one side, a DM will be proactive in presenting goals and complications. These elements are also often presented one after another in a linear fashion. On the other side, a DM is reactive to the player's choice of goals with their complications. This doesn't have to be presented in a non-linear fashion, but often is. You can look this stuff up and plenty of other people can give you great advice. Or you could wait for our video on the topic, coming soon to a YouTube video near you. Yes, for those of you who enjoy headaches, you could mix those examples to have multiple approaches. A campaign with a mixed approach could start as a sandbox campaign, only to transition to a more linear style of campaign or vice versa. If you're a newer DM, sticking to one approach will hopefully lessen your mental load and prep. Even if you aren't new, you want to use these transitions sparingly in a single campaign. Your pitch is what you'll present to your players so they can get the vibe of your campaign, but it'll also be used to guide your campaign planning in the future. A pitch should be 1 or 2 sentences that works with your approach. Your pitch should consist of 3 main components, excluding your approach: genre, theme, and character role. For example, a grimdark sandbox campaign where survival depends on the wits and courage of the characters as they struggle to protect the innocents against the evils of the world. Let's break it down. This pitch has a genre of grimdark fantasy, a theme of survival, and the character role of protecting the innocent with the approach of a sandbox campaign. When writing your own pitch, your choice of genre has the greatest influence on the other components. This is because most genres have common tropes associated with them, and while tropes can be ignored for shock value, sometimes it's better to do something cliché well than to reinvent the wheel badly. So to illustrate my point further, a theme like exploration is dramatically altered by a genre like epic fantasy or sci-fi. Speaking of themes, RPGs can be about anything, but for most campaigns, its theme will provide players with an idea of the kind of events and stories they can expect. Your theme goes hand in hand with the character role of your pitch in creating expectations and possibilities. Your character role is what your players will be mostly doing. You want this to be descriptive of a task or an indication of how your players could act and be perceived by others. Your start is the starting location for your players. Importantly, this doesn't have to be where your players start, but it could be, or it could be a part of the start. The start is intended to be a location where your character's first quest / mission / job / arc / adventure, whatever you want to call it. As an example, a dusty, lawless frontier town in the midst of a gold rush. When writing your start, you want to consider a setting, adjectives that describe the setting, and a hook. The setting of your start can be anything you want, but you also want it to be cohesive with your approach and pitch. Your hook is very important, as it will influence the beginning of your campaign. The hook should provide some intrigue for your players and give you some ideas for potential arcs or stories in your campaign. The adjectives in your start aren't entirely necessary, but do go a long way to enhance the feel of your choice of setting and hook. And that's the pattern and caps framework. The last thing to talk about is how to use this process during your campaign. When you find moments of downtime in your campaign, like after the completion of an adventure or arc, you could reevaluate your caps. The intention is to recontextualize your caps text for a new arc / adventure. Not everything you've written has to change, and some things are likely to stay the same, but this could offer a way to spice up the campaign. The key here is to keep everything cohesive and coherent with the previous arcs and adventures. Or don't, whatever. You can't say I didn't warn you though. Our next video will use what you've written for your caps so you can start planning a campaign. That's all folks, we've made it to the end of the video. Remember to like the video, subscribe, comment, share the video. I don't know, how about you watch the video again, or just go ahead and put it on loop for eternity. Anyway, thanks for watching and talk to you then. In eternity. Anyway, thanks for watching and talk to you later. Yeah, whatever.